and super good morning. Super and early good morning to one and all. It's a very early rise for all of us. Welcome to the What's Next morning. I'm Shreyans Dolakia, the next generation of SRK. And you all must be thinking, what's wrong with SRK to keep an early morning event? Come on, why to wake us up so early? Believe me, these two words have changed SRK's life in all years of our journey. SRK, like it says, truly helped us grow in all our years. I would like to thank all of us for showing up so early in the morning. Special thanks to our invited guests who are present here with our invitation. And of course, most importantly, our panel members of today, Paul Rowley, Tom Moses, Eric Jens, and Rob Bates. You would surely know SRK, but let me give you a glimpse of what is SRK, a short brief. We celebrated 50 years of SRK, and it was a great moment for all of us. Especially we are a family-owned, managed business, so second generation, third generation entering into business. It was really exciting to be part of that event. Just last year, when we all were sitting together, we realized that our elders have done a commendable hard work, but what have we done? So we started asking these questions that what have we done and what should we do next? And that's when, in the discussions, we realized that the SRK's journey so far has always been lying with these two words. It's so common, what's next? That curiosity that was in our founder and my father, that, okay, I've done this, what's next, what's next? So we realized that what's next is actually our USP of growth. So let us see what exactly that what's next story is. last year, we planted the seeds of what's next. And that led to the transformation journey throughout SRK's processes. We started asking what's next in every single processes that we were doing. And that led to a great transformation in SRK as a whole. We have worked intensely as a young generation, the next generation of the SRK. And today, we are here to bring that transformational change to our visual identity as well. Now, I'm very excited to call the man behind those two words, who laid those two words in our company and in our lives, in our blood. He is none other than my father, the founder of the company. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me in calling him on stage. And just to let you know, he's here on a very surprise visit because this was not planned. He was not, because he's coming to any kind of shows after 17 years, and that is just to pay tribute kind of stuff to the efforts of the next generation. So please help me, and it's a very emotional moment for all of us.
Good morning, everybody. As we saw in the film, when I started my journey, 2nd April 1964, at that time, I had nothing with me except support my family, ethics from my parents, and faith in God. I still remember 53 years ago, when I was only 13, 14 years old, I had to leave my mother, father, and village for me and my family betterment. Diamond is God for me, and it has helped me grow in my life from being a cutter to what I am today. I never expect that I will be addressing such a respected gathering of the diamond industry in Las Vegas. I am thankful to my SRK family of 6,000 and more than 5,000 stakeholders like you. My second generation has done much better than I did. And now I hope that my third generation will do even better with my principle of ethics and honesty. Today I am very proud and happy to present to you the one and new transformed SRK. Here it goes. Thank you very much.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you all. That's new SRK for you and for the industry. Let me read out our new brand promise, that is pure light. Comprised of one wavelength, diamond is God for us. And we at SRK strongly believes in philosophy of our founder. The words pure light are a combination of very powerful words that stands for trust, tradition, relationship, formed by leaders and flowing river. That's what we believe in. That's www.srk.one. That's how our stakeholders will be now easily connecting with SRK. Let me read out what's the SRK.one. One is the whole first whole number. The number is very small in units, but yet has a great impression in our minds. One reflects SRK's culture of seeing everyone and all the stakeholders as family members. We all are one. One reflects leadership, initiator, risk taker, yet being the lowest number. That's how, and our mantra you saw, which was, I am nothing, but I can do anything. It's connecting. We just had given you glimpses of our new portal. Of course, you're most welcome to come to our booth to try out the new portal and try the experience, because it has many first of its kind experiences that we're going to offer to our stakeholders. So it's not just for customers, it will be for all the stakeholders, including our family members. Now, success is never possible without family, supporters, and friends. Family members are already part of the celebration live from Surat. Supporters and stakeholders are already witnessing the launch, and they're already supporting early morning to us. And thank you very much for that. And our friends. We have a very loyal, dedicated friends of SRK that we call. Let me call upon the first friend that would like to share a few words on this occasion, because it will be very bad on our part that we don't have them with us today. Let me call upon stage Ms. Nirupa Bhatt. She's MD, GIA, India and Middle East, to say a few words on SRK.
Good morning and namaskar. Govind bhai, Jayanti bhai, Rahul bhai, Shreyans and the entire SRK family and the guests. It is a great privilege to have known Govind bhai for so many years, almost 30 years now. And I've seen him in one of those small factories that we saw in the film. And something that he mentioned about the values, the ethics, which he said has really helped him to be where he is today. And I can vouch for that. I'm one of the beneficiaries in terms of what I have really learned from him when I entered the industry. 30 years ago, I didn't know anything about the industry. He's one of my gurus, as I've always called him. And thank you, Govind bhai, for not only practicing this in your own life, but I think the way you have practiced this, demonstrated and led by example for the stakeholders and the community. I think the biggest, something that they really didn't talk about here, which I would like to mention, is the community work and giving back to the society that Govind bhai so well does. His personal time, it's not just money that he gives. He spends his personal time. The most recent example is state-of-art hospital that he and some of his friends and colleagues from the industry have built in the society in Surat. I did ask him once, why are you spending so much of your time? And at that time, he was in the prime of his business. He was actually spending a lot of time in the business. He said, I believe in circle of life. I believe if I give to the society, somewhere, somehow, it will come back to me. And that is so true. Not only him, his own next generation, even the third generation, as we see, has done a great job. I would wish Shreyans and the entire team all my best wishes. We are entering, and we are all talking about millennials. I think this is a great achievement on the part of Govind bhai and the entire senior management, that they have recognized that the business is transforming, markets are transforming, and the millennials, to be able to speak to the millennials, that you have delegated and handed over this responsibility to your third generation. So I wish all of you a very great luck, Shreyans and the family. And Govind bhai, again, my best wishes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nirupa madam. Let me please call upon stage our next friend of SRK, Mr. Biju Patnaik, who is Executive Vice President of IndusInd Bank from India.
Thank you, Shreyans, for the opportunity to come here. Good morning. Respected living legend Govind bhai, our friend and also a philosopher by himself, Jayanti bhai, Rahul bhai, Shreyans, and all the family members and stakeholders of SRK. Yes, SRK, I have a very long association with the legend himself, and I can call him a friend because he calls me a friend. Of course, I feel more like a disciple than a friend of his. I have a long association with him, the family. So Nirupa ji has already told, we almost feel quite often as two sides of one coin, so I should look at the other side. What SRK means to me, I think SRK is a company forever. It's forever begun with its very commencement of business, because SRK has been built on a solid foundation of values. The value drivers that's keeping it going and also it is energized or charged by competencies. And all those competencies have been always encapsulating the changing dynamics and capturing the immediate contemporary realities and keeping it at the tops. So, however the contemporary narrative changes or the business dynamics changes, SRK always remains at the top. And that has brought it probably so far, and all the what next has been answered in the same way. So when Shreyans brings in the what next, that's so apt to look at now. Let me explain. When we look at a sustainable company or a forever mark or a forever brand or a forever company, what we see sustainable values, that is always there. And also we see how a company always managing and controlling and remaining at the tops of constantly changing dynamics in a business and a marketplace. And I have seen that. I was a little bit enthused when Shreyans put 2008 to 2017. And I can never forget the Living Legends one interaction with me in 2008. And it was, he is a person who remains, he appears always as if he is in the background, but he is always candid. He has a childlike simplicity and never any skepticism about anything. He always comes and faces the situation and handles it and directly holds it by its horns. And I remember that in 2008, one December morning post Lehman crisis, and we were chatting about the future, what next. And we discussed something, and I see that completely, constantly, it's transforming the company from that moment on into a new horizon. So that's Govind Bhai for you, a person who has been a big friend and always an absolute role model, like Nirupa said, for the hospital. And we have seen that, how the hospital came into being and how anything he touches becomes gold. So I can always wish all the generations to come all the best of luck. And I can say that in what next, continue to keep the values where it is that has made you sustainable and continuously capture the constantly changing immediate contemporary narratives to remain at the tops. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, friends of SRK, Nirupaben and Biju sir. And sorry for the disturbances on the stage. Now it's time for what we all have gathered here. It's time for the what's next of the industry. Why I'm saying industry is because we have already shown what's next meant to SRK. Now we have this panel discussion where eminent panelists will present their cases, and we have a question answer round on the subject of what's next of the industry, the future of the industry. Let me invite on stage our panel members, Paul Rowley, Tom Moses, Eric James, and Rob Bates. Can I have Rahul Bhai and Jayanti Bhai to welcome them on stage, please? Can I request Rahul Bhai to welcome Rob Bates? And I ask Jayanti Bhai to welcome Paul Rowley with a bouquet, and Rahul Bhai to welcome Tom Moses. And Jayanti Bhai, please welcome Eric James on stage. We have this eminent panel members it's a mix from mining field, research, and then certifications, and from banking side. A panel discussion is nowhere headed. It's like no directionless if it's not moderated well. Join me in welcoming and introducing Rob Bates as our moderator. Thank you. Please, let's hear it for our first speaker who will present here.
Thank you.
As a first panel member. Join me as Paul Rowley. Introduction and then,
Good morning, everyone. It's nice and bright and early, but I have to say I sense a certain energy in the room that perhaps the youth of Shreeans is bringing along with us. But 5 minutes just to run through what is next indeed. If we go to the next slide, please. Let's start with a simple statement. Consumer demand is the single source of diamond value. Let me repeat that. Enhance it, in fact. Consumer desire is the single source of diamond value. So as we look at this in everything we do, whether it's through mining, the midstream, the downstream, we must ensure that we enhance our product. At De Beers, we watch that across the pipeline. I say to my mining colleagues, we mine as a consequence of consumer desire. Hence, our strategy to mine to demand. Because without it, to be quite frank, we have nothing. So the consumer remains all important. We must embrace them, and we must understand that what is next is a changing consumer. So as we move to the next slide, and I look upstream. Technology within diamond mining has revolutionized over the past years. We no longer use picks and shovels. We use enormous trucks. We invest tremendous money in vessels to mine the seabeds off the coast of Namibia. But in everything we do there, we ensure that we protect the environment around us to protect our product. And we utilize technology to its fullest, equally in the midstream, as we go to the next slide. From diamond sorting technology all the way through the system, we ensure that we understand where our product is, that we can monitor it, we understand it, and making sure that we extract the best value out of every diamond, that we put it in the right hands of our site holders, companies indeed like SRK. As we go to the next one, we must protect our product. It is natural. It's been in the earth for billions of years. We extract it carefully, and we nurture it, and we ensure that we can detect and understand what is natural and what isn't. Extremely important to us. So that's the midstream. Let's go to the next slide. But to me, this is the most important part of where we are. So if the consumer represents total value, then we have to understand that changing consumer. The marketplace has changed. Bricks and mortar are still there, but the youth of today, in fact, not even the youth. My mother shops online, and she's 85 years old. It's an interesting concept. How do we capture it? I believe we're about to go through one of the biggest changes in consumer behavior that we've seen for decades. What's next is a consumer that will window shop while watching TV, or probably watching Netflix on a computer, actually, or a laptop. They multitask. They do things quite differently. As a diamond industry, historically, we've shied away from the online sales. We've shied away from internet because we believed it will damage our product. I say we have no choice. The internet is the future. We must embrace it, and we must ensure that we mix it together to create a new experience. It's not just about buying online. It's about how we experience online shopping. How do we encourage people to come into our stores, and how do we change the experience once we're in the store? Because a consumer today will determine which product it deserves to buy or it wants to buy. We have a choice, we own it, and we can embrace it. We can embrace technology. Just as we've embraced it throughout the pipeline, we can indeed, at a consumer level, embrace it as well. And that's where SRK, I think, are looking at what's next. We've seen some of it here today, but I've been very impressed with SRK's portal for some time. It gives a good experience. It's not just about looking and understanding what price the product is. It's the ability to actually experience the product online. And then how do we, as we move down the line, ensure that the consumer also appreciates that? So what's next for me is that if we are truly going to live to our phrase, a diamond is forever, and ensure that a diamond is indeed forever, then we must make a shift and a change today. So on that note, I thank you and I look forward to the panel.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Now please join me in inviting our second panel member to say a few words, Tom Moses.
Good morning, everybody, and Govind Bhai and family, your family here and your family in Surat. Congratulations for the change. So, listening to this next generation, okay, thank you. So this, I thought about talking a bit about GI's history. You know, it's an 80-plus year organization. I've been associated with GI for 40 years. And I have seen a lot of changes in the need to, with evolving technology, with instrumentation, with a growing commitment to research. And all of that is critical for the future. But after listening and learning a little bit about the SRK transformation, I thought I would change my paradigm a little bit for today. So I want to take a few minutes, as Paul said, we're about 5 minutes, to review and look backwards. And this is a quote that and an author that I look at from time to time. And I think this is important to look backwards, often to give us a path for going forward. This is, I think, another article that I read recently. I think that really, I think, resonated with me. And as you can see, Ms. Brown was former CEO of LVMH in the U.S. And she talks and teaches now about aesthetics. And when I listen to those in the trade and talking about the difficulty with margins and creating value, I thought this resonated with me. And she made a couple of these comments here that I thought were quite good. And I just want to, for those in the back who may not be able to see it, let me just read in particular the bottom one. So and she says, the business of aesthetics is built on storytelling. You can have a well-developed sense of what is beautiful and pleasurable, but if you don't communicate it, you probably can't execute it and definitely can't scale it. And I think this is so important for our business today. And it may sound a bit like a contradiction coming from me, GIA, the creator of the 4 Cs, and clearly that is obviously important, but I think, again, telling the story of the diamond. And going back to my first slide, I said, well, you know, how do you do that? What's an example? And I think these are just 2 simple examples. And how both Cartier or Winston, and also there are many designers today who do it and create value. So what happens is that the value of these pieces of jewelry certainly have far greater or larger amount than the sum of the parts. And I think in particular with the diamond industry, we really just look at the sum of the parts, come to a value on the weight and quality. And I think this is a new way of thinking, and I think it's, again, it has been done in the past, and I think we can reproduce it. Again, my kind of summary here is that there's clearly been for generations a strong desire for diamonds and gemstones, and looking back over history for centuries. And I truly believe that communicating the story about our products that have both intrinsic and emotional value is an important key for the future. And my last slide, and I'm going to tell a story here. So, because I think it relates both to today's event and the family. So, a few years ago, I was leaving the Smithsonian Stone. This is a Hope Diamond, of course, originating from India in the 1600s. I was leaving there at about midnight, and fortunately, I was with the curator there, and we just I went with the security and locked the diamond up at night. And for somebody who loves diamonds and as a gemologist, it was such a great experience for me. And as I walked out of the museum to catch a taxi back to the hotel, I noticed a homeless guy. And then I thought back, the last owner of the Hope Diamond, so in the late 1900s, who ultimately sold the diamond to Winston, and Winston donated it. Evelyn Walsh McLean was her name. And she was famous for a couple of things. She wore the diamond, enjoyed it, actually played games with it. When she had children come to her home, she would hide the diamond, sometimes even outside. Drove her security people crazy. And they would play games and have to find the diamond. Which, by the way, it explained to me later when we were studying why there are so many abrasions on the diamond. But the important thing about her, which I thought was, as I stood there that night waiting for a taxi, is in her later years she was very generous and philanthropic and focused on the homeless and giving to the homeless. And she lived not far away, but in Virginia, and spent so much time donating time and money to the homeless. And on that note, on that closing note, I also want to again recognize the work, Govinbhai, you've done, and this continued work. So I'll close there, but it's a story of a great diamond and the great things that come with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have one presentation shot from Eric James, and then the questions can start with him, I guess. Sorry.
Well, I'll keep it short. I also have not prepared any presentation, no slides, not because I'm lazy, but I thought I'm between you and I think a very interactive panel discussion, which I look forward to. First of all, congratulations to SRK. Very well done. Congratulations to the next generation. I believe this next generation is key. Because this next generation has to take responsibility for the heritage of the diamond and jewelry industry. I'm in this industry only for the last 5 years, but what I've seen over those 5 years inspired me a lot. Inspired me also to do just a little bit more than be a banker. However, sometimes in those 5 years you're also extremely disappointed by behavior of stakeholders in the industry. And that's not going to be a bad story right now. It's a positive story because I'm a positive person, but a pessimistic person. But sometimes you're extremely disappointed because of behavior of certain parties in the industry and basically spoiling it for the rest of the industry. What do I mean with that? I mean, we talk a lot with the regulators, whether it's here in the US or in India or in Asia. And the regulator says to us, well, what's the reputation of the industry? It's all about the reputation. And I think this next generation here, this company where we are right now, is taking its responsibility. But we as an industry should take the responsibility for the heritage we're responsible for. Where are we in 5 years from now? Where are we in 10 years from now? Where are we in 20 years from now? Even 100 years. This industry is more than 100 years old. So where are we? And we have to imagine, we have to inspire each other to have that common goal to make sure this is a great industry with an outstanding reputation. And lately we have taken some initiatives on see how we as a bank, which are a sort of neutral bystander, how we can help as a bank to work with other banks, to work with all the stakeholders in the industry. And I think we're getting there because I think there's a common feeling right now that some actions have to be taken. However, what I still miss from time to time is that we share the knowledge we have. And of course, there's also competition and there's legislation, etc. But I learned, for instance, last year I was at the Singularity University in California. All the young people, brilliant young people between 20 and 30, that's the next generation. They were successful because they shared their knowledge. They had a good idea, but then they went to a friend or somebody in the family and say, hey, I have a great idea. And then that other person said, well, that's a great idea indeed, but if you add this and this, it will be even better. So 1 and 1 were 3. And I think we should try to stop the polarization and the politics in the industry. Because what I said, I'm a pessimist. And I think as a pessimist, you're also a realist. But we have such a great, what I said, responsibility, such a great business for a real product. I mean, look, you talk about the diamonds and look what it is and what story it is. It's a storytelling of what we heard earlier. So let's go for it. Let's have a good panel discussion. And again, congratulations to the family and with this great initiative. And I hope it's a good example going forward. Because after all, what I said, we are a bank. And as a bank, we look to good companies. But good companies is not just financial results. It's also, is the company doing good in terms of these kind of strategies? So congratulations again. Thank you.
And Rob, it's over to you, the floor.
Well, thank you so much. I want to thank SRK for inviting me. Congratulations. Thank you for the lovely flowers. I really appreciate that. And thank you to my 3 panelists for 3 excellent presentations. One of the things when SRK invited me here, they talked a little bit about the philosophy of the company, and they said one thing that the founder in particular always stressed is keeping things positive. So that's one of the things we want to look at today. We hear so much about the problems of the industry, and I certainly write a lot about the problems of the industry, and I think we all know that they're there. But I think we all believe, most of us are committed to this industry long term, and we believe that there's opportunities out there. So I'd like, as a first question, I'd like to ask my panel, what opportunities do you see in this industry? Where are the opportunities? We're all committed to it. What do we see ahead that perhaps people aren't taking advantage of, or that's exciting to you? Want to start? I hope there are some, right?
Started the value trade, yeah? Yes.
Sorry, no problem. Look, I think the industry is full of opportunity. The diamonds are all about, in itself, our product is a symbol of love. If there isn't opportunity in love, then what is that? So I think we need to look at, as I said in my presentation, how do we market our product? How do we sell it in a different way? I think the real opportunity, and perhaps it's what SRK are embracing, is how do we understand our customer is changing? And how do we change the way that we interact with that customer? The traditional side of things, and I love the storytelling, everything is about a story. There's no doubt about it. It's the symbolism, it's a moment in time that we can capture, but do we sell that appropriately? How often do we walk into a store and feel fear, actually, at buying a diamond? It shouldn't be like that. It should be embracing and encouraging. So to me, the true opportunities lie specifically downstream. It's creativity and it's innovation. And it's embracing the future consumer, basically.
I can't agree more. But I would like to add is something that we are our own enemy. We're our worst enemy. I mean, we talk bad about the industry. We talk bad about ourselves. We gossip about each other. And sorry to be a little bit, I mean, it's early in the morning, provocative, but I think let's go back to what we really want to achieve as an industry. And I feel as a banker then part of the industry, of course, because well, we have that responsibility from that perspective as well. And we talk about, well, there's a problem for the banks, there's a problem for financing, there's a problem with synthetics, there's a problem with the consumer, etc. And I fully agree with the mode we have here. What we should like, if we walk out of this room later on, to say, wow, there are great opportunities. There are great opportunities going forward. There are great opportunities, indeed, to make sure the consumer is engaged, and the new consumer, whatever that is, who that is, and that the regulators and all stakeholders talk positive about the industry, and that's the positivism I would like to bring forward. So that's the biggest opportunity, in our opinion, to go forward.
So
I would just like to build on a couple of the comments that Paul made, and I think innovation and technology. But so what I think especially over the last decade or so with laser technology, and so we're able to create more options. So greater yield, we're able to create different shapes of diamonds, and I would say over the number of years that I've seen, and just looking at the demographics of diamonds coming to GIA, the opportunities for fancy colors, and I think there's great opportunity there. But and just one point I think that you made, Eric, I think sometimes we are our own worst enemy. We create biases that within the industry that the consumer really doesn't have. And I find it sometimes odd for a rare natural product for within the industry, we almost project that certain colors or certain kinds of diamonds the public or consumer will not like, when in fact they don't come with any of those biases. So I think the innovation and technology create this opportunity, but I think it builds on this theme of being positive and looking for other opportunities to sell these kind of products. And the other word I heard was kind of communicating this in a positive way.
Tom, when you talk about certain types of diamonds that you believe the trade has a bias against that maybe the consumer doesn't, is there anything in particular that comes to mind?
Well, another example I would use is fluorescent diamonds. And again, having a little bit of history in the industry and at GIA, clearly there were times where some fluorescent diamonds actually were sought out and more desirable. And from a scientific purpose or perspective, certainly studies that we have done, and both with people within the laboratory, within the industry, and to the public, again, we see none of that bias. In fact, we see in many cases that the public actually prefers this kind of diamond. So looking at it without any bias. So again, I think that's another opportunity and a situation. It's very hard for me to understand because there's no scientific or technical reason for the industry to devalue these kind of diamonds.
Okay, and Tom, you talked a lot about storytelling, which was, I think it's a great topic, and it's something that this industry perfected a long time ago and now has kind of perhaps maybe lost the plot a little bit. But is there any companies, and I'll open this up to the whole panel, either inside the industry or outside the industry, that you feel do a really good job of storytelling?
I think if you look about storytelling, it's all about the inspiration and imagination. And I think if we start telling the story, that's one thing. But what you want to see is basically the consumer, what it's all about, start telling the story and have the experience. We all know that it's all about experience these days. And we see indeed the modern companies which have a clear story and an innovative story and a differentiating story do way better. Companies which challenge themselves consistently by saying, can we do things better from a CSR perspective, but also from a design perspective, from bring to the market perspective. And that's where you see now where you're going to see the winners and the losers. And I think if you see the losers in the industry, that's also very bad for the industry as a whole. So I think let's talk about indeed the positive stories we see and the initiatives being taken, and that's set as an example going forward. We look very much from that perspective. We all know KYC, and know your client, and that goes very, very wide. It's not only the structure, but also who's the client, what's the client doing. We look also at what the client is telling in terms of a story. Then we also introduce like KYT, know your transaction. What are we doing for the client? What is the client doing in terms of transactions? So what kind of transparency do we have there? But more recently, and there's also discussions we had, it's all about not only KYC, KYT, but it's also about KYP, know your product. And if we tell the story around our product and have the provenance around the product, and I think then we get to a complete story from that perspective.
I think there's a couple of things actually. I think There's no doubt that certification has its place in our industry. It gives us confidence. But I think we may have gone too far with it. I remember certainly a year or so ago when I was here, and seeing on one of the booths, no product whatsoever, just certificates. And I just think it gives us a sense of where we could get to if we were unfortunate to just head down that route. We need to go back to understanding what the meaning behind the product is. What does it really do? Then we talk of good stories, and I think we don't sell those stories very well. And we've got, for example, and I'll bring up here, SRK, and I know Govinbhai has got a particular passion for a hospital that they've built in Surat, which is an incredible achievement. They spent, collectively with other site holders, millions of dollars in providing healthcare to people that can't afford it in Surat. And it's coming from the diamond industry. It comes from giving back from communities. Likewise, we do a lot of it, and we try to promote ourselves from a De Beers perspective on what we do sustainably at our mines in Africa. Again, we're trying to build the story around it, but we don't always use these stories appropriately because it's too easy just to your point, just to say that a bias to a certain product is on a piece of paper. We need to get back to understanding what the product is, the beauty, and what it's actually achieved and given back on its journey. There's no doubt that millennials today, and we talk a lot about millennials, but they are the future. And they want experiences, and they want to know what that means. And that's how we've got to expand on it, in my opinion. It's about selling dreams and experiences, not just about selling the product itself.
I would just add that there are many different kinds of stories, as both Eric and Paul have pointed out. But one that comes to mind to me, and certainly Paul knows it well, is the Botswana story. So in 1968, the biggest import product from Botswana was beef, and it was one of the poorest countries in Africa. And look at that transformation today, really from diamonds, and how few people know that story. But I think there are so many different opportunities or stories to tell. So whether it's the design of the diamond, what that transformation went, or the story of how the diamond was integrated into a piece of jewelry. And I think some people do parts of this, but again, from what I can see when you, and I'm perhaps not the best one to answer this, but offhand, it's not like a whole list of companies come to us, and I think it should. We should be able to just kind of, I think, talk about a lot of organizations or companies who are exceptionally good at telling some part of a story. And I think we, or certainly I at least struggle with giving examples.
Right, but how do we get that? How do we get that message out? How do we get that? Because I think we all agree a lot of consumers hear a lot more negative things about the diamond industry than positive. How do we get a positive message out about the product and about the industry?
You could help, Rob.
Okay. But I just talked to these people, so.
That starts with ourselves, what I said. If we start believing ourselves, each and one of us individually in this room, think of what's a good story today. And if you share that story, it's a very simple thing. If we share that story today with 5 other people, or 3 other people, it can go exponential. So it has to start. But we also have to stop by being defensive. Sometimes we're very defensive, and what you said, Tom, we only see our own problems. But in the end, speaking with all our clients, and especially these days again, when we have everybody together, if you hear the individual stories, indeed, about the beneficiation and the hospitals and doing good. I mean, you had Jews for Children. We have the Deaf Foundation. I mean, there's a lot happening, and if I think the diamond industry is making so much change in the lives of many people, and people tend to forget that. And the stupid thing is that the people making synthetic diamonds, I mean, are totally ignoring that story. I mean, the diamond industry creates great wealth and beneficiation for many people, and that's something different than And if you look at a lot of other industries, it's a story, it's a dream. And so indeed, this beautiful movie, United Kingdom, about Botswana, and my first trip to Africa was going to Botswana, and I met you, and we sort of fell in love. No, but it was a really experience. And for India, my trips to India, if you see what's happening there, going to Surat, going to Jaipur and Mumbai, and that's a personal experience, and that's what I try to share with everybody. So that's well, leading the example, I hope, and make it a better world from that perspective.
And I come back, I mean, I think we've got a great medium in the internet to put that message across. We're not, we're still too fixated on product.
Yeah.
And we need to look at when we're marketing, and I don't think it's there, but it's got to come. We need to market our product with those stories, with those messages. We have to change the narrative effectively into a new modern world, basically.
Yeah, and one thing, I don't know if you are familiar with the GIA M2M program, which provides a new way to track a diamond's origin. It provides a new way to kind of tell its story in the form of an app. But it's a really amazing program. And I want to ask Tom to talk a little bit about that, and also maybe some of the other panelists to talk about, is it important in this day and age, with all the questions being raised, that have been raised, at least in the past, about a diamond's origin and some of the good stories you could tell about a diamond's origin, is that something that new consumers are going to be interested in, proof of a specific stone's provenance?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I would say this, I mean, we talk about, or part of that story is potentially talking about where that diamond came from. That's one part of it. But the concept of that was more to create a platform that would allow whatever part of the story a retailer wants to talk about. So it could be, as I said, the design. It could be about and using, again, technology, using imagery to address things like, and I think Paul's truck is kind of a good example. I mean, he talked about, he said they're not using kind of pickaxe today, but even imagery like that communicates to the consumer that it's a professional industry. It's not children that are, and I think that those kind of perceptions still exist, but certainly we don't want to bring that up. But by doing things like that, that's even part of the story. So, and then there's the opportunity, again, to talk not just about the sum of the parts going into this gemstone or piece of jewelry, but the artistic side, et cetera. So we're excited about this concept. And again, I think the other point that you asked the question, I think Paul touched on it, is how do we get this word out? In some ways, we have today it's with social media, it's more efficient to transfer and communicate than ever. And that's only going to continue to escalate. So even in places where one would think that it's, India is an example, where everybody has a smartphone, or most of them, and they may not have, for example, traditional ways of communicating. All of this information can travel so quickly.
Right, and because we keep hearing that there's no way to track a diamond's origin, but and you know, there are people who do it through computers and through tracking and through invoices and stuff like that. But this program, at least you feel it provides something of a scientific basis for certain diamonds to track their origin.
Well, let me just quickly walk through that process, because I think it's only a small part of it. So what we have developed a method that if we receive the diamond directly from a producer, and with a number of different types of analytical tests on the rough diamond, if we then see if that polished diamond is that is cut from that rough diamond, we refer back to that kind of data, do the same kind of data collection. We have found at this point in 90% of the cases, we can say that that polished diamond came from that rough diamond. So it doesn't necessarily say or guarantee that it came from a particular location. So that is a technology that we have developed over decades of studying millions of diamonds. So that, again, that's one part of the program. But as I said, the functionality of this platform is to be able to do a whole lot more, even for it to be personalized for a consumer after they've made the decision to purchase the diamond and the jewelry, to write in their part of the story. And again, with sharing and so on. So it's a way to get things out.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Eric.
No. I want to build up what you were saying. And again, we had the discussions earlier by saying, I talked about know your product and know your transaction, your KYT and KYYP. From a banking perspective, that's one thing, because we want to know what the provenance is, but we also want to know where the goods are, which you finance. And sometimes it happens that the goods are gone and your money's gone too. But I promised to stay positive. But from a technology perspective, we know that the technology is there, from the mine into the retailer. Can you put it all on a blockchain or whatsoever? Well, let's not dream in colors which don't exist. But parts of it you can do. I mean, we have a great system called KP, the KPC. You can work on KPC. We have a GIA. I know the BSs work on certain things. So if you're able to share, you might be able to see in 10 years from now, and we need to have that long-term vision, 10 years from now, you can have a perfect provenance. And you have to be part of that provenance, otherwise you're not in the business. And that's the guarantee we can give to the consumer. And then from a banking perspective, you create asset-based financing. More secured lending rather than just receivables, but really you know what you finance and you know where it is. So you create a watertight system, and all the NGOs which talk bad because the industry is not reacting can't say anything anymore. The synthetic industry, which is trying to sell their product on the back of what's happening in the diamond industry, can't say anything anymore. The regulator will see a perfect watertight system and say, oh, this is got good, normal commodity business. Well, and of course, diamonds are not a commodity, but we can learn from the commodity business how to create provenance. So yes, I think the future is there, but we have to invest in that technology. And what I said earlier in my brief introduction, we have to be able to and willing to share what we are doing in this area, because that will create the exponential growth.
And Paul, you're a miner. You typically don't, well, not you personally, but yes. But your company does not typically specify the origin of diamonds. It has kind of a mix. What do you think of these kind of programs?
No, look, I think the programs are there. It's effectively for Evermark itself. We support these programs. It's not that we don't. We're very supportive. We have to balance between creating a scalable business that adds value to the midstream and makes it very efficient against, if you like, an origin base. And I think the origin base is something that, to be fair, will become almost a prerequisite into the future.
Yes.
It's going to be a stamp that it's a stamp of assurance more than anything else. I think what we've got to get back to is this Google talk of 10x change. What's the big idea? And to me, that's where we've got to get to in this space. What's going to really change the experience? And I'll come back to that as well. The experience of the consumer. What will excite them? Exactly. What will make me walking into a jewelry store feel exactly the same as I do when I walk into Apple? What will be that experience? How does that change things? And I think that's the dynamic that we've got to get, because that's what we're really competing against. The product is, in itself, is desirable, it's there, but we need to change the experience.
Because the things we just discussed are actually hygiene factors. That is a given thing. You need to have it in place, and then indeed, the wow effect, the experience, that's the biggest challenge.
And is there any jewelry stores or just general retail stores that you think, I mean, everybody talks about Apple, but is there any stores that right now that you think that could be kind of a guidepost or something that people should look to and say, okay, this is the kind of wow experience this industry needs to provide?
Look, we've got there are great companies. We've seen some. Harry Winston gives you a great experience. Tiffany is a stunning experience. Right. Let's be honest, not everyone can afford to shop in these environments, but I think the learnings of what changes that It's not just about the products, the way it's displayed, it's the knowledge of the staff within those stores.
Right.
It's their longevity of experience, the training, that allows them to give you something different. And I think that's what we've got to create. It's all about the environment. Apple itself, there's not a lot of product. It's about the experience of the people that serve you. It's welcoming. It's just one example. Tiffany would be the same. You walk in, you get a sort of sense of feeling.
Right. I read somewhere 85% of customers think they know more than sales associates. I mean, and you know, in jewelry, where there's such a knowledge imbalance, that's something that people really, you know, a good jewelry sales associate, I think, can really make a sale in a huge way. Let's talk a little bit about financing, since we have Eric here. You know, we have a lot of wholesale companies. When you look to finance a company, and what kind of things do you look for, and what kind of things can the industry do to make itself more attractive to banks?
Well, that's always the puzzle, and it's not just financial statistics, financial data that we look at, because that is again the hygiene factor. You need to have the right equity, you need to have the right bookkeeping, you need to have the right auditors, etc., etc. So that's the overall experience from the financial side. What we definitely look at as well, not only we as a bank, as ABN AMRO, but also other banks. Okay, what are the people behind? How is the structure? What is this next generation? What is succession? How is the overall corporate structure? Do we have a huge Christmas tree somewhere offshore, or is it a normal, transparent setup? Who are the customers? We look at our clients' customers. Which is extremely important. What are the counterparts? Is it a real counterpart, or is it a little pole in the sand in Dubai? Is it a real counterpart? So we look at all these aspects, and we look literally people in the eye and say, hey, do we believe in this relationship going forward? And it's not just giving money, because every bank can give money, but we really try to make the difference by saying, okay, can we help the company? We look very much at the angle of performance of a company and basically the potential. And sometimes you see a company which is performing very well, but then you look at their strategy going forward, and then we don't see the potential. Sometimes you walk into a company in Surat in the factory, and you say, hey, if I compare that to other companies, this is not a company which is going to make it longer term. So we look, and in the meantime, the financial performance could be still good. We see other companies where we think, okay, financial performance is not very well, but we see the potential. We see the family members designing new products, going for the innovation, looking at the new thing, and then we say, hey, here's a drive, and then we love to help the company and finance the company and grow with the company. And I think that's a different spirit we have. And indeed, what I said, all the financials, that's hygiene. I mean, that has to be there. But it's way more at the softer side, but the more important side from that perspective. CSR, same thing. Is anything done on beneficiation? How is human rights, how are they protected? So these, and we know from history, from statistical evidence, that good companies which do good, which have CSR and sustainable sourcing, etc., and manufacturing in their protocol, in their system, and like you, sir, I mean, do better, perform better, and gives us a way more, confidence that we can grow together. Yes.
Paul, it's probably very similar to what you look for in your site holders, I would assume.
Exactly. So we've, we've been on a journey over the last 3 years of working closely with banking colleagues. A number of Eric's colleagues have decided to reduce their exposure to our industry, and we've been on a journey to ensure that we can create that transparency that Eric's looking for, to give the banks, and to be fair, non-bank finance, a lot of confidence to invest in the diamond industry. Within the midstream today, we've got a little over $1 billion now that's non-bank finance, which is showing where the trajectory is going, and we insist on that transparency into the future. So we need it, but I come back, we need to be telling the good stories. All too often what we see is that negativity. Right. And it can be difficult to open a bank account if your occupation is in the diamond industry, as Eric will tell you.
And banks are kind of susceptible to that kind of negativity that they hear in the media. You know,
it's not so much the banks, and I was in Mumbai in February. There was a good conference organized about financing challenges, etc. But I said, if we keep on saying that there's a challenge in finance, then there is a challenge in finance, and I think there's enough finance in the industry. there's about $13 to $15 billion. Biju? I mean, there's a lot of finance out there, perhaps even too much. And we think it's not just enough facilitators, banks or non-financial institutions, of non-banks, which are supporting the industry. So indeed, working with the biggest, but working with other banks and saying, okay, can we attract basically more competition for ABN AMRO? Because we don't want to be a land of last resort either. And I think overall in the US, in Dubai, in Asia, there's enough finance. In India, I think the banks are struggling and restructuring. The RBI has put pressure on it. And in Europe and Antwerp, it's just a little bit thin at the moment, but others are coming in there as well.
The general trend is for less finance for the industry. Do you see that turning around at this point?
Well, what we see is basically companies deleveraging. After the huge boom, there's a huge leverage in the companies. And now we also say to clients, stop looking at the top line. Just look at your bottom line, look at your profit. And then people found out, hey, this is interesting because with lower top line, with the deleveraged balance sheet, I make more money in the end. So that's the realistic kind of approach, and we see that trend happening. And I think the whole IFRS approach has helped a lot because we know what the valuations are. There's no lot of fooling around with the figures. People say these days, our clients say, well, instead of running our books, we are running our business, which is a different thing. Running our books is different than running the business.
Okay, one more question for Eric, and then I'm going to throw it open to questions. Would you finance so many diamond companies, would you ever finance a lab-grown diamond company?
That's a good question, thank you. I knew you would ask that question. The answer is a little bit more complicated but I'll keep it short. ABN AMRO is financing oil, is financing cars, is financing all kind of commodities. So the only question is, can you finance it in a consistent way? Do you know what you finance? You know what the value is. But sometimes you need to get your collateral back and to safeguard your money. The problem yet with synthetics, you don't know what the value is, and the value going forward in the future. And a synthetic diamond, a lab-grown diamond, is in my opinion, and I'm not saying that because of this audience, but it's not a diamond. I mean, there's some similarities with the carbon, but it's a total different thing. It's a total different experience. And we trap ourselves as an industry every time to say, oh, this is a threat. No, I think it's an opportunity to make sure to show the consumer what the difference is. I mean, it's a totally different experience. It's a different product. So if it's more a mature product, which it will be going forward, it will be different buyers, it will be different market, it will be different experience, etc., etc. And would we finance it then? Yes, but let's build up some track record. So for now, no, but in the future, I do not exclude. But again, as a different product, and only if we know what the reasonable value is going forward, and we don't know yet.
Okay, do we have any questions from the audience? This gentleman here. And I'll get to you after.
Hello, I'm Rajiv from LK Imports in Los Angeles, graduate gemologist 1977, and I agonize over things. I submitted this question when I signed for this registration. In this, and this might be, I mean, first of all, thank you SRK and thank you panel. We had a very enlightening talk, but we have certain issues that directly relates to our everyday everyday business, or in other words, like making a living. So we are, and a lot of colleagues I have, and we agonize over this thing, who are typically wholesalers, and had submitted this question that in this changed supply chain, how does a typical wholesaler fit in? And what do you see as his future? It could be more for SRK than this enlightened panel here. What I'm trying to say here is it used to be miner, manufacturer, wholesaler, retailer, consumer. I mean, that's totally disrupted now. And we sometimes see, I talk to my colleagues, and we see written on the wall that a typical wholesaler is would be extinguished. So Any thoughts on that? Is it a relevant question? If it's not a relevant question,
I think it's a relevant question.
it doesn't have to be answered.
Take track of that. Look, I think, yeah. Rajiv, I think it's actually a very good question. I think it's like anything else in the pipeline. The diamond pipeline has value opportunities throughout it. The question is, what are we doing to create value? So as a wholesaler, what do I do to create value for my customers, be it upstream or downstream, actually? Am I providing finance to an upstream partner, a downstream partner? Am I creating a stocking of out-of-balance goods that when the market changes, I can supply and I'm alert to that market? I think it's all down to the wholesaler themselves to see, how do I fit into the chain? It is changing. There's no doubt about it. The idea of going mine to market, so to speak, brings everyone much closer, and it will become much more competitive. But it's how we differentiate ourselves in order to add value that will come into that. But it's down to ourselves to do so.
Okay, yeah.
Can I chip there in quickly? Because it's again perhaps an example of that we think, okay, the wholesale and the diamond industry might be under pressure, but I think we should look outside on other sectors as well. I mean, look at banking. I mean, banks in the current form will disappear. Yes, I think if you look what the impact of Uber is or an Airbnb, self-driving cars or self-driving trucks, these jobs disappear. Bankers disappear, perhaps marketeers, I don't know. I don't want to insult anybody here, but jobs will disappear because it will be taken over through the direct mechanism. So what can we learn from other sectors from that perspective and apply to us? And every day, what I said, you have to go to bed, to go to sleep and think, okay, have I made a difference today? And how can we do it better tomorrow?
Totally understood. I mean, the biggest hospitality industry does not own a hotel. The biggest car company, or transportation, Uber, does not own a car.
Exactly.
Right, that just happens,
So,
yeah.
but how does this happen in our industry? What am I supposed to do? You said something that, okay, stock the goods that would be in short supply, or maybe you see that they won't be as easily available. Now with this technology, SRK portal, every single retailer has access to so many more goods that I can ever dream. Even people who are bigger, 10 size bigger than me, can stock. And SRK, and there are a lot of other companies who are doing the same thing. So many goods are just available.
Yeah, I believe, I'm just speaking for myself, that if you make a contribution, if people respond to what you do, if you have a real place in the pipeline, you will have a place in the future. One of the reasons you look at Airbnb is because the hotels are a very difficult experience. You look at Uber because it offers a better experience than most taxis. Okay, you can talk about the technology and the business model and all that stuff, but fundamentally, people respond to it because it offers a better experience, right? So if you offer, as a wholesaler, a good experience, I believe, for your customers and for the upstream and the downstream, I believe you will have a place in the future. Now, do you have to think about your place, and do you have to think about different niches, and do you have to look at it from a businessman? Of course you do. Everybody has to do it. I have to do it. Everybody has to do it here. But if you do what you do, and you do it well, and people respond, I believe you'll have a place. That's my take on that.
One last question. We used to have a lot of mom and pop stores who would call us for stones. That breed, very sadly, is just disappearing. And those are good stores because consumers go to Blue Nile, they come with a printout, and they want the retailer to beat those prices. I mean, I don't know, I don't have the answer. I mean, but it's very sad to see those loyal customers going down who we were providing a value by offering them the stones.
Yeah, but then still, more than 90% of diamonds are bought at brick and mortar stores. You know, and you look at all those companies, they're all opening brick and mortar stores. So let me just ask this, Joe.
My name is Larry. I'm from a jewelry store in South Africa. And one of the important things to us is the origin of the diamond. Paul mentioned earlier that sometime in the future De Beers is going to be doing that. To me, one of the the big thing we've been talking about is telling stories, and surely the origin is a big part of that story. Also, the big threat that we're talking about is lab-grown diamonds, and if we can tell the origin of the diamond, that automatically nullifies the whole lab-grown thing. You know, the question you want to tell is, where's your diamond from? No one wants to answer a laboratory. So I say that this to me is a real urgent matter. And I'm wondering why you guys are not doing something about it right now, as opposed to sometime in the future.
Well, Larry, you can do it today. You can buy diamonds today, not necessarily directly from De Beers in South Africa, but obviously there's a number of other producers that are selling direct in South Africa.
Yeah, they're very small. They're small scale.
No, Petra's a fairly big, it's got 2 of our former diamond mines. It's a very big company. It's got plenty of goods for sale. They are there and it is possible. I think, as I said, our business model is to really ensure that we have a very sustainable midstream, and we do supply an aggregated mix into Botswana, and then we sell out from that. But we do also supply unaggregated goods, for example, in Namibia, in Canada, which are done that. And it's not something we couldn't do. I come back, I think the story is one thing, but we've got to embellish upon that. I think it will be a prerequisite, it will happen. But it's more around, for me, what is the experience of coming out of it? What does that diamond mean to me? Not just where it's come from, but what is it?
Sure, that is part of the experience.
It's part of the
Absolutely,
experience, I agree.
It's a big part of the story.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a bunch of, we had some questions over here, I think.
My name is Dan DeMint, and I'm a small retailer from San Antonio. My question is about the BGM issue with GIA. I have to commend SRK and their openness and wonderful website. When you go search RapNet and find that 70% of diamonds disappear when you hit the BGM button, is GIA have any plans to address the BGM issue that seems to disappear on their certificate?
Thank you, Dan. So GIA actually does address that issue. So let me, as succinctly as I can. So if there is a diamond with body color outside of yellow, brown, or gray that is has more color than an F, so it's a faint green or faint blue or faint pink. And from brown, that begins at K, where we would note that. So it's been built into GI's system for decades. I would also say, though, that the design of the system, and intentionally, we recognize that when that color scale was first established in the 1940s, we recognized, Mr. Littecode at the time of design, recognized that there could be tints other than yellow that we included in that, in the same, and think of course, a color grade is a range of hues and appearances. So we do address it to a degree that we believe is consistent with the system that we designed. Again, I'm going to go back to kind of an earlier comment I made. This is something that I wonder is necessary. Again, it's one of these industry biases we've created. So to a consumer is a G with a tint of brown or an H with a tint of brownish versus one that is Cape Series or yellow. Do they really have a difference in opinion? Again, we create those differences and then create these value distinctions, which I find is unusual. So we built the system, designed the system with this in mind. So at this point, we feel we deal with it at a level that is appropriate. The last comment I would make about it, yes, there are, I think, a lot of organizations that do that, but based on what? Based on what standard? How much? And how, what ability and repeatability do they have to enforce that?
I appreciate your remark, but When you go on SRK's website, they tell you. When you do a search on RapNet and 70% of the goods disappear, what ends up happening is when it's not on the certificate and it's purchased, when it hits the U.S. market and the resale, it's forgotten about. And it's when there's 20% difference in the price, and with the internet, it's a big effect. It's something that y'all certainly should address stronger. SRK addresses it very strongly, and I would say to you that y'all are falling down on that issue, and it has a big effect on all of us.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, SRK, for a wonderful event. Mr. Govindji saw future in diamond. He believed in diamonds. He saw a vision. But my question is, what is next for the diamond industry? Because preferences are changing for the people. In the stores, the young generations are not entering so much as before. So what do you think the long-term future for the diamond industry?
Look, from our perspective is that, and I'll come back, I think the younger consumers perhaps aren't coming to the store in the numbers because they don't window shop the same, they do it on their phones and everything else, and that's what we've got to address. How are we reaching out to that consumer? That needs to change, there's no doubt about it. But every research that we've done from De Beers, and we've done a lot recently, it tells us that actually the desire for our product remains extremely strong. For different reasons. It comes a little bit later, marriages are later, etc. We buy for different occasions, and we buy for different experiences. And that's what I come back to. We need to evolve and change. If we don't, to your point, we will have a lot of difficulty. But at a retail level, we have to change the way we operate.
But the customers, they don't have that confidence what they used to have before because they don't get that return of investment. So now the younger generation wants to go for a holiday, for a Louis Vuitton bag, or all these things. You know, it probably starts from my home, from my wife. So my question is, how we sustain? Like marketing, okay, but next,
well,
what next?
Just a sidestep. I mean, I guess you've been in London in the past somewhere, right? Have you ever got into Victoria and Albert Museum? Yeah, there's a special wing with only the jewelry. Yeah, and I went a couple of years ago, and then you see that jewelry is there already for hundreds of years, thousands of years, in all different shapes. And so, question: how is there a future for the diamond industry? For sure, there's a future for the next 1,000 years. So that's my person, because what I want to add there is that we are inclined always to look at the short term now. What's the threat of today? And we are biased by saying, okay, what are the threats now? And that will determine the future. No. You have to step back from time to time, take the long-term trends, and learn from a Victoria and Albert Museum experience, and to say, okay, what is it? And adding to that, I know the millennial, and I know the research you've been doing, the DPA have been doing, is that the millennial doesn't want to do the things in the same way as their parents did. So if their parents had a traditional diamond ring, well, they don't want to have a traditional diamond ring, but they want to have another experience with that diamond, yes? And they probably want to have an experience by controlling themselves how to do it. I mean, millennials want to buy the diamond themselves rather than getting it, and I'm just in general. So it's if you can give the different experience, whether it's online or whether it's look and feel, and that they are self-controlled, I mean, they have a different story. So these are the challenges we have with each other.
Okay, we're going to have to move on from you. But, if I can just add, and we'll get to you. If I can just add one thing, I believe that the idea that when you just mine a diamond and then it gets cut and then it kind of gets sold as a diamond, I think those days are definitely, fading away. And you talked about Louis Vuitton bags. That's a bag with a brand. That's a bag with a story. And I think that's what consumers are increasingly looking for. So, sorry, you had a question?
Rob, sorry. Maybe this may be the last question that we can take.
Okay, all right.
Because we'll have to respect the time.
Sure.
First of all, good morning and thank you very much. My name is Leo. I'm from Israel. And I would like to make a point regarding the marketing for generic diamonds, generally speaking. And I was listening to the panel, and I understand that everybody should, on the private side, go to the story and what's behind my individual company or my way of thinking. And on the other hand, we are talking about technology and how everybody like sharing knowledge together to try to achieve to a better place for the diamond industry. But I don't see right now people or the big minds giving marketing for generic diamonds and pushing them in the front for the world. And I remember when I was a kid, I was looking at James Bond, and all the time what he was stealing was diamonds. And I was looking in other movies, and everything that I saw was diamonds. And today, I don't see it anymore. Even Marilyn Monroe, Diamond's best friends, or the lady's best friends, there is no there anymore. So it's very nice that we have each one individual planning on marketing, on doing something, but where is the sharing that everybody is doing together to push it, that all the world will know that really diamonds are forever, or diamonds are a great investment?
No, and I think, fortunately, I think we've, as diamond producers, we formed the Diamond Producers Association. We kicked that off a couple of years ago. The initial investments were relatively low, but I'm pleased to say that we've announced this week, in fact, that we've collectively increased that to $60 million this year, that we will be investing, and predominantly in the States. The biggest chunk of that will come to the States for the season. So there has been a big shift in the producers coming to the table, and we recognize the need to do that generic marketing, so we should see that.
Okay, we actually have to wrap it up, but I'd like to ask the panelists any final thoughts, and anything in particular, if you want people to leave today, anything you'd like to see people do a little bit more of, and perhaps anything you'd like to see them do a little bit less of. Any thoughts along those lines? You want to start?
Well, look, I think I've said it from my perspective. We need to change. I think you hinted at it, Rob. You said the idea of mining a diamond, polishing a diamond, selling a diamond, it's got to change. And if we continue doing the same, then we won't be here in the next 100 years, that's for sure.
I think the point you made about this perception that the salesperson knows much less than the shopper, I think that really has to change. So education, and again, the theme we've talked about, being able to talk about and explain the merits and the benefits of what I would arguably say is the best product, especially a luxury product, that anybody can buy.
What I said earlier, leave this room with a positivist attitude, no gossip, no polarization, no politics. We have to be one industry with a positive story, and that was, after all, what you tried to achieve as our host.
I like the gossip and the politics because it's me business. But thank you so much to our panel and to SRK for holding.
Thank you, Rob.
Of course, the session is very tempting, and we all want to ask many more questions as we get into the mood a lot, and the questions start arising. But we'll have to respect the time, and someday or somewhere we'll have to have a full stop. Of course, it's not a full stop, it's a comma, and we'll still continue with this kind of discussions. And it was really good insights from all three of you as panelists, and Rob, really good job in asking the questions that industry might want to. Now, can I just request our next generation leaders, Nirav Narula, to just token of appreciation to Rob and Eric, please. And following will be Akshay Dholakia. Akshay, please. Can you offer the same to Paul and Tom, please? I would like to request all the directors of SRK to appear on stage for a photo op with the panel members now. And I may request Nirav Narula to offer a word of thanks to all the audiences, the beautiful audience that we had for the session, and eager and curious to know how their business can transform, what next is for individual businesses. Of course, we got many insights, but now it depends on individuals. There are many questions that were still pending to be answered, but it's never that we can get all answers solved or get answered in just one question. So maybe we need many more sessions. Yeah.
I would like to thank all of our panelists, Mr. Paul Ridley, Tom Moses, Eric Jane, and Mr. Rob Bett. And of course, all of you all our esteemed guests, and your presence was that most important to us. Great appreciated. It was hard effort of 28,000 man hours put in SRK team that was paid off as we conclude this event on his exit. We believe deeply in family, and you all are now part of it. I would like to conclude this by requesting you all to come and experience a new website experience at our booth. Thank you very much and have a good day ahead.
Thank you. Niro,